Welcome to another episode of Simply Sapphic. And we are joined today by our amazing guest, Leah.
Hi.
We are talking today, we're talking about financial wellness. And you might wonder, why on Simply Sapphic, where we talk about everything we wish we knew when we came out of the closet, are we talking about financial wellness? Allison and I, when we started this podcast, we set out with the mission to not only talk about everything we wish we knew as a queer person, but also talk about the educational gaps that we as Sapphic people and queer people have as a society. A lot of us who are listening to this podcast are AFAB or women aligned, which means we are marginalized. And as we were growing up, we weren't taught financial wellness, right? Whether we were, doesn't matter what generation, whether we were okay, you need to find a man who's going to take care of you, or you have to find someone who's going to take care of the finances. In my family, we didn't talk about finances at all. And so financial literacy was just this big black box that I just never really dove into, especially as someone who got a liberal arts degree. And so as we are diving into this podcast and getting into season 2, we wanted to really start talking about how do we uplift the community from its roots? And our roots often start in, can we afford to survive? Can we afford our day-to-day? How do we thrive? Oftentimes people have said oh, money doesn't buy happiness. I don't need a lot of money. Not being able to buy groceries, living paycheck to paycheck is just not how I want to be. That's not what I want our queer community to rely on, right? And so that's why we brought in Leah to kind of start from the basics, right? How do we uplift our community from our financial britches?
Yeah. And I also think a sense of demystifying the kind of fears and intimidation around money, because I know talking about money for some people is really scary, and it's a vulnerable thing to talk about, and there's just a lot of, as you said, educational gaps. So that's why we're doing this episode, to make this topic easier for you to talk about, to demystify it, and to then help you uplift that area of your life. So Leah, we're so excited to have you with us, and we would love tell us a little bit about you, your pronouns and all that stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today. My name's Leah. My pronouns are she, her. I am the founder and financial advisor at Orchard Financial Group, located here in Austin, but I work with queer folks nationwide. I am also founding a new company that is launching next year called the Lavender Purse.
Yes.
And it is all about financial coaching for queer folks, but also specifically for late in life Sapphic folks. So folks coming out a little bit later and really navigating that transition into queerness and managing their money for the first time through that lens.
Okay, you heard it here first, the Lavender Purse. I honestly, when you told us about that, I was so excited, because you just don't see that, right? Here's a very niche, I'm a queer person. I came out later in life. Maybe I'm going to be managing my finances or thinking about my finances for the first time in a really long time. And my queerness, what do I do? It's so needed. And I'm so excited that we found you.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk more about it.
Of course.
Yeah, yay.
Okay, so let's start off with some general terms, because a lot of people talk about financial wellness, financial readiness, financial blah, 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 blah. But can you summarize what those words mean to you, both from a queer lens and just in general?
For queer folks, financial readiness is really about safety and autonomy. It means having the basics covered, cash flow, savings, your support systems, so that you can navigate a world that isn't designed for us. Financial readiness is not necessarily about being wealthy. It can be about not living paycheck to paycheck, though. And it's really about having the flexibility to make choices. And I feel really passionate about that specifically. I talk to all of my clients about it. For anyone who is AFAB or experiences womanhood, it's really important that we know what's going on with our money. It's really important that we are educated so that we have choices in our life that we can make to keep us safe. When we have a foundation like that, we're able to leave unsafe jobs. We're able to leave unsafe housing. We can set boundaries with our family. We can get gender affirming care if needed. We can build our chosen family, and we can make value aligned decisions for ourselves. I always hate when I have to hear stories about folks being in a situation because of money. And my whole goal in life is to like help people get out of those decisions so that the decisions that are those situations, so that the decisions that they're making are really decisions for themselves that are going to make them happy in their life, and not because they're stuck somewhere because of money.
Because queerness is ultimately like making choices that benefit you. And if you don't have the like financial autonomy to do the things that you want to do, gender affirming care, like dressing, redoing your wardrobe, like getting a haircut, like all of these things require money. And so it is an unfortunate foundation of our life is the ability to pay for things.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I think we're so like grateful to have people in the queer community like you who are helping everybody get back on track. For someone like me who feels like overwhelmed or feels like they're bad with money, what's the most important thing that we can do to really like take control or start taking the first steps toward like being in control of money rather than money being in control of us?
Yeah. So something that you already are aware of, but not everyone is that our upbringing really shapes our money stories and how we relate to money, with ourselves internally, how we relate to money, like out in the world, like what are our peers doing? What do they have that we don't have? Or why don't I have what they have? And the secret that I like to tell everybody, because it's not really a secret, but people tend to think this, is that no one is bad with money. Like, that's actually not a real thing. The thing is that you don't have the skills. You didn't learn the skills when you were younger to be able to navigate the world that you're in now. So I like to think about being bad with money is more of like a skill deficit and not really a personality thing when we're thinking about it like that.
Okay, this is so tangential. Have you ever played the game Wavelength?
No.
It's this new game on Instagram. It's coming around, but it's basically like you say a word and then you put a dial to like where on the dial you think it is. And last night it was like, this is more a talent versus a skill. And so on the dial, you'd be like, okay, what's like
our hint was like dancing.
Dancing.
Is it more of a talent or a skill?
Or a skill. But then I was like, what's the difference between talent and a skill? I'm getting to the point here. It's really interesting because then I was like, okay, talent is like innate, like you're born with it, and skill is something you develop. And I just realized like managing money is never innate because money is a construct, right? Nobody is like innately talented at money. It's literally a skill that you build over time with practice.
As you like learn the systems around it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So everybody starts from zero. There's nobody who's like innately better at money.
Just like from the womb, you're like, I'm a finance bro.
Yeah.
Like born with the little vest on. Yeah. And I also think that helps like with the vulnerability of like, well, I'm just like really bad at this. It was like, yeah, we all start off really bad at this. We all have to learn how to ride a bike, you know?
Mm-hmm. Which honestly, okay, I don't know for anybody else who's listening, but to me, it kind of gives me a little bit of hope because I was always like, oh, liberal arts degree. I got my degree in English. Like, I'm never going to be good at money. Like, don't ask me to do math. But now I'm like, oh, it's literally just something that I have to practice. And that it's like I can take control of that skill. Like, shifting gears into budgeting. And I know that, like, budgeting, you're like, okay, we just need to take control. But I know that there's so much buzz around budgeting. And, like, I just don't really know where to start with that. Like, how can somebody start building a simple budget that they can really stick to? I can't tell you how many budgets that I've started.
And like, what does budgeting actually mean?
Yeah, that's true.
Because like, I grew up with budgeting being my parents would put money in envelopes in the closet, and it was like Billy Graham budgeting, right? And then there's like apps that are like, don't go buy coffee, and that's your budget.
Balance
like,
your checkbook.
Yeah, and I was like, what's a checkbook? I'm kidding. But like, what is budgeting to begin with?
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna like zoom out just a little bit. I hate the word budgeting, but it is such a buzzword and everybody loves it.
Yeah.
But money is here to bring us joy. So whatever we do with our money, we should always be spending in like a values aligned kind of way. So when you look at your historical spending, like say you get an app and you're like, I'm going to track how many times I bought like a cup of coffee or how many times I went to this place. Looking at your spending is really an indicator of where your values align. And if you look at your spending and you say, oh, actually, like I don't value these things, that's where you can start thinking about making some changes, because you always want to spend aligned with your passions and things that bring you joy and stuff like that. But cash flow planning, that's how I like to say it can be really overwhelming, but there are some super simple things you can do to try to make it easier on yourself. Most people don't love getting in the weeds of their transactions. Most people don't like diving into apps or like putting everything into Excel or like having to look at their $50 a month coffee budget and be like, okay, I've spent $42.50 of that. How many more cups of coffee am I allowed to buy this month? And we're 2.5 weeks into the month. So like, what am I going to do about that? Right.
Yep.
I love to do more of like flex cash flow planning with clients. And while the concept is simple, sometimes it's easier to implement if you have multiple accounts for yourself. So the way that I look at it is we kind of break spending up into 3 different categories. We're like, what are our fixed expenses every month? What do we know we have to pay?
That's like rent, things like that, your phone bill.
Utility bills, my cell phone bill, maybe my student loan payment.
Don't remind me.
Oh, gosh.
Oh my goodness. Oh. Okay, keep going.
Yes, everything like that. And sometimes folks even like to put their grocery bills and stuff like that into this bucket. This is everything we know we're going to spend every month. And we can look at our income and we're like, okay, well, we got to take all that out, right? So we know what's coming in. We got to take all that out. And then we have this remainder amount. So there's 2 other buckets we might want to fund outside of savings. We might want to fund a bucket that has non-monthly expenses in it. So like my cat needs to go to the vet twice a year. I probably need to think about how much that's going to cost, because it could be a few $100s, but it's not every month, but I don't want to forget about that expense either. So we've got that little bucket filled out. And then the third bucket is my favorite because it's the flex bucket. And this is the fun bucket. This is like, I know I can just spend whatever I want. Like I can do whatever I want with this bucket of money. I don't have to track my transactions. It's a specific amount of money that I can spend every month. So to manage that like in real life without using an app or having to do all of this tracking is you can take your paycheck and you can just split it up between the 3 accounts. So you're like, this much is going into my fixed bill account every month. I have all of my bills automated. I don't really ever have to think about that account. Then the account that you're really having to pay attention to is your flex spending account, my fun money, my entertainment, my Uber Eats, like all of that stuff. You just know that that is the dollar amount that you can spend each month. That's like my favorite way to think about it.
So that's like going into your bank and just opening up 3 different checking accounts.
Yeah.
And then just being like, all right, my fun one, my monthly ones. And okay,
this is off script, but like what about credit cards? Because I was always told that you should be spending everything on your credit card and using it like a debit card, like paying it off like a debit card so that you can earn points and stuff. But if you only have everything going in and out of a checking account, is that tell me about that.
So this advice is like really high level, simple advice for anyone who's watching. But in real life, like in practice with my clients specifically, we utilize credit card strategies.
Mm-hmm.
So really what's coming out of that like flex bank account is probably just the credit card payment where we're like paying off the credit card each month.
Got it.
So it's a little bit more complicated because you don't always want to advise people to use credit cards because not everybody is good at credit card management. And it can be a really slippery slope if you don't have the discipline or someone kind of helping you practice the discipline to pay the credit card off each month. But yeah, I love a credit card strategy. All of my clients do it. I do it. I just like don't always talk about it, but I can talk about it if you want to.
Sure. Yeah.
I think we'll go into it a little bit later in the episode as we kind of like first develop the foundation and then we can dive into credit cards. Because I know credit cards for me was like a really intimidating conversation.
Yeah, you just got a credit card.
I like just figured out how to get a credit card.
Yeah.
And so I was like, what does this mean? How do I do this?
Mm-hmm.
But I love what you said about like the evil word of budgeting. Like this year, it's not so much budgeting, but just like how do you manage your cash flow?
I never really stuck to budgeting because it would just make me feel like I was doing something wrong, right?
Mhm.
Because I'm like, okay, I'm going to spend a certain amount of money on groceries. And then if I go over, I feel like I've done something wrong. Every single month I go over on my grocery thing. I guess I don't know how to reframe budgeting from a tool that empowers us to just like a new way to talk shit to yourself.
Yeah, so that's why I tend to avoid that word because
Mm.
it has this all of these ideas surrounding that word, or that like I have to either follow this really well, um, or I'm like not good at money, or I'm not doing something good, or like I need to like punish myself because I didn't get coffee, or I got too much coffee last month, or I bought too many shirts last month. And then you get into this um cycle sometimes where it's like binge and purge. So I'm like, I'm not going to spend anything. I'm going to do so good for 6 months. And then all of a sudden I'm going to be like, you know what? I deserve this.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go out and buy myself this thing. And maybe it's like really expensive, but you're like, well, I haven't spent for 6 months on myself. And so it's better to try to build into your daily habits this like idea of managing your cash flow. Sometimes I think about it when I'm thinking about like people who are just like, they come to my office and they're like, I'm so bad at budgeting. Like, you're going to look at my accounts and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, look at what you're spending money on. And I like to think about making changes in small bits. So, like, just like, let's look at our fixed expenses and then let's like see what's left over and see what we can spend later. And I think about it in terms of like physical fitness, right? So it's like the new year, we're going to make a resolution to do better on our fitness. We're probably not going to go to the gym and just walk on the treadmill for 20 minutes. We're probably going to do like a couple of things, right? We're going to like walk on the treadmill and then we're going to try to lift some weights. And it's like the same thing with budgeting. Like you can't just focus on one thing. You have to focus on like a bunch of little things and then you make progress over time, just like with physical fitness. You're not just going to write down a budget on a post-it note and then it's going to be better the next day,
I'm
right?
like, ding. You're like, and now I have a six pack.
That is how we feel bad about ourselves.
Yes.
But I mean, I also really like what you said about like money should be like look when you look at your budget and when you track your spending, you can key into the things that you value. So like I value eating organic food. I value all of this stuff. So maybe I need to shift things out of like things that I don't value. I don't know. I can't think of anything right now, but like into obviously the thing that I value more. And so that I like that a lot. I do want to move into like saving because I know like I mean, I feel like America and most of the world was made to keep people living paycheck to paycheck. But like, are there realistic ways that you can start saving so that it feels less like you're sacrificing in order to save and more like you're, I don't know, building something?
Even if we look at the queer community itself, LGBTQ folks have less than the average US American saved. We historically make less. So LGBTQ folks make 90 cents on the dollar of non-LGBTQ folks, which is hard. And then if we talk about our trans brothers, sisters, siblings, folks in the community, they're making more like 60 cents on the dollar of what everybody else makes. And that makes it really hard for us. We're actually starting almost out at like a little bit of a deficit compared to everybody else. So when we think about savings, it's all about little tiny wins and building habits. It's not actually about the amount of money that you put away at the beginning. It's about starting the habit of seeing $2.50 a week is going from my checking account into my savings account. And then I'm seeing that transaction every single week on my transaction report, right? And I'm like, that's a habit I'm building. And in 3 months, maybe I get a little raise. Maybe I get myself a side hustle from a hobby that I love and I'm like starting to make a little bit of money. And I'm like, oh, I can up this $2.50 to $10 a week, right? And so to start, it's about building a habit, not about the actual dollar that you're putting into the savings account. And kind of trying to grow it from there. So even if it is, I said $2.50, but even if it is like $5 a week that you can get into a savings account, And I don't know if you already want to talk about this or if we have this set up for another time, but putting it into a certain type of savings account
Mhm.
can help as well. So, using a high yield savings account that is not at the bank where your checking account is often a great way to start saving because not only are we building the habit of putting money into the account, but we're building the more important habit of not taking money out of the
Mm.
account. And if we can see it every time we log into our bank account app, that money is there, it's going to be really easy for us to transfer it back over. If we use a different bank and we're kind of like getting the money out of our eyesight, it's an easier habit to start to not like pull the money back in.
When I was in the beginning of my savings journey, I remember I would go online and be like, help. And the internet people would be like, all right, start with $100 every month. And I was like, well, that's literally not possible. I don't have $100 every month. So then it felt like I just couldn't ever catch up. And so I love that, like, even starting at like a dollar, 50 cents, like just something like we talked about that with fitness, like something that's achievable that you know you can accomplish that feels good. So you're not like beating yourself up over and over and you're building that confidence. I think is wonderfully empowering.
I mean, I love the metaphor of that. Of you said like it's like physical health, right? You're not going to go to the gym and immediately like run 5 miles on the treadmill. You're going to go to the gym. You're going to stand there. You're going to contemplate your life choices. You're going to walk on the treadmill for a minute, and then you're going to realize you need to go home, right? And then the next day, maybe do 2 minutes, and the next day. But it's like a practice of showing up rather than how far you can run. And so I love, love, love that. I think, do you have any tips and tricks that'll help people stay consistent with this kind of saving practice over time?
Yeah, the number one thing is automation.
Mm.
So, automating and having the bank at a different place that you're not looking at every day. Um, and you want to start really small, like something that's maybe even under what you think you can afford, because that way you're less likely to need to pull the money back out. So, if we're sticking with some of these like more attainable numbers, you're like, I can save $5 a week. Maybe you save $4.50 a week, like just under what you think you can save, because you're more than likely going to be able to leave that money alone. Um, and you start with little small goals. So savings goals are moving targets. That's how I think about them. It's not one set target because it's the same with debt payoff. If we look at debt and we have this big student loan dollar amount, it's really overwhelming. So we want to try to pare it down to something smaller and more attainable that gets bigger over time. So maybe the first goal is I'm going to try to save up to $500 or maybe $250. And I know that that's at least going to be able to cover like a small emergency vet visit, not like to the emergency vet hospital, right? But like to my regular vet that's like unexpected. Or it's going to cover maybe there's a nail in my tire and I have to like get that fixed. Once you hit that smaller amount, maybe you're like, okay, the next amount that I'm going to try to save up is 1 month's rent or housing costs. And then you can maybe get to that goal. Then after that, you might start ratcheting up from there. Like, I'm going to try to save up 3 months of living expenses, which at the beginning with $0 saved, that's a really big number. But once you're ratcheting up your amount, it gets easier to attain those larger goals. And that setting super attainable goals is something that can keep the momentum going and keep the habit going because you're achieving that goal. If your goal is to save $10,000 and you're saving $5 a week, you're always going to be overwhelmed that you're not like reaching that target. So starting with a smaller target, I think is a good way to do it.
We talked about high yield savings accounts. So when you're saving these smaller amounts, I'm assuming we want to put that money into a different bank with a high yield saving account. My bank I know doesn't offer high yield savings account. I get like less than a penny. Like they're like, here's your interest. And I'm like, thanks, this is insulting. But I know like you have a high yield savings account and there are like credit unions out there. But like, first of all, I wanted to ask, what is a high yield savings account and where can we find them?
Yeah. They're relatively newer products. They haven't been around forever, but a high yield savings account is any savings account that's paying like a significant amount of interest. So where your regular brick and mortar bank that you see on every corner is paying you like pennies, like 0.001% interest per month. Your high yield savings bank, which does not have a location on every corner, is probably paying you closer to 3%. More recently, they were paying higher than that, but now they've kind of come back down a little bit. But the biggest difference is that most high yield savings banks don't have physical locations, which allows them to have a little bit more to be able to pay the people who are putting money at their banks. So the money is safe in that you can't just go use your debit card to take money out, which is awesome. Um, which is like one thing I love about it. And when you're evaluating banks, you're always going to want to make sure you're looking for a bank that has FDIC insurance. So if something is promising you a really high interest rate and it looks a little bit too good to be true and you like don't see any locations anywhere, it's probably too good to be true. Like check their status and make sure that they're insured. Um, Credit unions don't always offer the most competitive rates, but they are nice because they're member owned, and some people really appreciate that model. They feel like the credit union is really looking out for their best interest because they're not a big bank. But usually, you can find better interest rates at the high yield savings banks.
So as we're talking about like savings and these high yield savings account and how to like manage our cash flow, are there certain maybe like milestones that like our Sapphic and trans folks should maybe start thinking about saving up for? Like you had talked about like your tire gets a nail in it or your pet, but I'm also thinking about, maybe folks that want to have kids, like those kind of milestones as well.
Yeah. So pet emergencies and nails and tires, those are things that like everybody in the country is going to deal with, right? But there are some really unique things that the queer community might come across when it comes to planning for our money and certain milestones. And when I'm specifically really thinking about family building. I'm thinking about like housing and where you're living, and I'm thinking about gender affirming care. Those are like the three bigger expenses that I don't see with clients who are not in the queer community. Housing is more about like there's a lot more housing insecurity in the community, I think, than there is like outside of it. I see that a lot, especially with younger folks. But we're thinking about different milestones. Gender affirming care and building families are the big ones. And it's all about knowing how much it's going to cost you and kind of backing into the goal. So if I know how much it's going to cost and I know what I can afford to save towards it, that gives me a loose timeline of when I'm going to hit that goal, right? And if that timeline doesn't feel good, then I need to figure out a way to make up the difference. And often it's changing my income. There are only so many things that we can change, and changing our spending by just not to harp on coffee, it's just like an easy scapegoat. Like often to me, our big longer term savings goals, it's not about like cutting out that cup of coffee. It's about increasing our income overall or decreasing like a significant cost. Like, am I going to bring in a roommate and reduce my housing by half? Or like, what does that look like? Or are we going to go from a 2-car family to a 1-car family? So like bigger expenses can help us in the long run. But that's typically how we start planning for those expenses, are like timelines. And a lot of times queer families, our financial lives just look different. So when you're talking about non-queer families, it's a pretty linear process. And I'm sure, I don't know if y'all grew up this way, but you may have, where it's like you go to college, you get married, you have 2.5 kids, then you save for retirement, or you save for their college, then you save for retirement, and then like that's your life. Our lives are not linear like that. Like it doesn't work that way. Like we might have kids before marriage, we might never get married, we might like have a kid solo. Like I'm a solo mom, and so like my life looks really different than someone with two incomes in a household, right? So the bottom line is that our lives look different financially, so we have to save differently. And a lot of times that means prioritizing some of our bigger goals before we're prioritizing goals like retirement, and sometimes even goals like house down payments. Whereas other people in the world might be talking about that, and we might read all about that. The reality is, my queer clients a lot of times are saving a little bit less towards their long-term retirement goals early on because we are saving for family building or gender affirming care.
Yeah, because I think about like the cost of top surgery,
Hmm.
especially when insurance isn't going to step in and cover that. Like it can be a really big cost depending on like also like where you're living too and
Yeah.
like what you're making. And so I think I love the idea of like you're not behind too because you're saving for that goal first. It's okay to do that and to maybe, I don't know, like put a little bit less into retirement.
I mean, I'm curious if like you have $5 a month, right? Would you say if I'm trying to save for top surgery and I'm trying to save for retirement, would you recommend, I guess it depends person to person, but would you recommend like 250 toward retirement, 250 toward your top surgery, or just go completely in on top surgery?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say it really depends on the person. But I'm often recommending a mix, and it's usually not 50-50. So, gender affirming care and building families are really, in my mind, very important goals because that is funding your life and your happiness and what you think is going to bring you joy, right? Like you're like, I'm going to have kids and that's what I want. And so saving and attaining those things earlier, I think is better. So we're probably allocating more towards those shorter term goals. But there are things like sometimes your employer might give you extra money to put money into their savings plan for long term retirement. So we're often at a minimum trying to get that. That could be called an employer match. So the employer says, I'm going to offer you this retirement savings plan. If you put 2% of your income in it, we're going to give you 2% of your income. I always want a client to do that because that is part of your compensation package at work. Like it's part of what your employer is willing to give you for the job you're doing. It's just deferred, right? It's deferred income until later. So you do want to try to get that. And then we'll look at, okay, how much can we allocate towards these shorter term goals?
Okay, I wanted to very quickly touch on credit scores and then we'll get into investing and then we'll wrap up the episode. But I know that as we are talking about these really big purchases, sometimes a lot of us are thinking about loans, but you can't get a loan if you don't have a good credit score. So I'm curious just to start, like what is a credit score? Why do they matter? And then if you're starting from scratch or rebuilding, what are a few things you can do to improve or start building your credit?
Yeah. So credit scores are your financial trust score. That's how you can think of it. They track whether you are borrowing responsibly, paying on time, and keeping your credit balances low.
So this is like if the bank can trust you score.
Exactly.
Okay.
The better your trust score, the cheaper it's going to be for you to borrow money from people. The lower your trust score, the less like preference you're going to get on things like interest rates. Sometimes they'll be higher for you. The most expensive money to borrow is credit card money. The biggest part of your credit score is a formula and it's broken up into all these different categories. The largest category of what impacts your score is your payment history. So as you're starting to rebuild or starting wherever you are, pay your stuff on time, pay the minimum payments on time, set up auto pay on those minimum payments. If you're going to pay more than the minimum or your goal is to try to pay more than what you owe each month, make that payment separately so that you're not mixing up whether or not you've actually paid what's due that month. So pay everything on time, pay what you owe each month. That's the first thing. There are other like hacks you can do if you're trying to rebuild. So if you have a family member that you're on good terms with, you can ask them to put you as an authorized user on their debt, and then you get credit for their past history. Only do that if it's good, like verify with them that it's good history. You don't want to put bad history on your account, right?
So they have a
Um,
bad credit
so
score.
don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do
Okay.
that. Verify that it's good. Um, and you can also do things like if you have flexibility in where you live and you're a renter, some places will report your rent payments to the credit bureau and give you credit for those payments, much like if you had a mortgage, like debt on your house. So you can look for that. And then some places offer what are called secure cards. So if you're having a hard time getting an account to build history for yourself. Sometimes a bank will say, put $200 in this savings account, and we're going to give you a credit card that has a $200 limit. You're going to charge that every month and pay it off. And we're going to give you credit for that on your score every month. And that can help like rebuild you.
I want to jump into investing, and I'm really excited to talk about this because I feel like investing both feels like a bros bro world, but also like it's something that can be completely life changing for a lot of people once they start utilizing it. For beginners, like people who didn't grow up learning about it, people who are like investing is something crazy. Like, where's the best place to start learning about investing, and what do they need to know going into investing?
But I also think too, to start off, like, what is investing to begin with? Like, when we say that, what does that mean?
Yeah. So just to high level define what investing is, it's taking risk with your money in hopes that it will grow in the future. So, unlike a savings account where you put your money in and you're going to check it every day and you know it's there, it's never going to change. The only change is going to be if there's interest deposited, it will go up a little bit, a few dollars here and there, right? Investing is different in that you're taking a certain amount of risk with your money. So there's like this risk reward thing going on. If you invest a certain amount into something like, say, the stock market, you're betting on these companies getting higher in their value of their like prices, and therefore your own investment is getting higher in value. The most important thing to know going in is that there's no such thing as get rich quick. It doesn't matter what ChatGPT tells you about the 5 stocks to buy, you shouldn't do it. And that your value will fluctuate. So on any given day, you might log into your investment account and see that your account is down or up or neutral to like what you've put into it. But that's the biggest thing to know, is that the account value is going to fluctuate, and that's normal and okay, even if it fluctuates down.
So, like, not to panic
Don't
if
panic.
it goes down.
Right. One of the most important skills in investing is being disciplined, being able to, once you figure out how you want to invest, really believing in that strategy and staying put for the long term. Investing is not like a 1 year strategy. We're talking 5, 10, 50 years is what we're looking for in terms of growth.
So, this is for people who are maybe really thinking about their money long term. Might
Yeah.
want to start considering investing.
So we're not going to put our gender affirming care money into the stock market. We're not going to put our IVF or our surrogacy money into an investment account. All of that money is going to stay in a savings account. When we're thinking about retirement, or maybe we have enough to put money away for our 1-month-old's college education in 18 years, those are the types of goals that we're thinking about investing for.
Okay. Because I think sometimes there's like the myth of like the get rich quick. You put your money in the stock market and all of a sudden it blows up and you're a millionaire. But yeah, that doesn't seem like that's actually the truth.
Yeah.
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT. Well, it's interesting because I read something somewhere that said that the most successful accounts that are out there as far as investing are those accounts where the person actually forgot they existed. And so they invested like a couple thousand when they were 20, and now they're 60. They haven't invested any more because they forgot about it. And now that's grown to like a couple 100,000 because they just haven't touched it. And so when I started learning about investing, one of the first things that I was taught was like buy the lows, or like don't panic, like see the lows in the stock market as like on sale. So I usually, whenever I have like $50 that I save whenever I see like one of my stock option thingies down, I'll like take that $50 and I'll be like haha, and I'll like buy it on sale.
You go clearance.
Yeah, and then when I see it high, I go great, awesome. But because I know that my investing personally is for my retirement, or like my kids' college, or like something really like long term from now, I go, oh man, I look at when it gets high and I go, oh man, that's great. But like in 20 years, it's going to be even higher. It's going to like, whatever.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we don't know, the apocalypse might come. But
We don't know. The apocalypse might
It
come.
might come.
but I mean, it's like, I think that's another thing is I whenever I look at my money in my investing accounts, I always have to remind myself, like, reminder, you might never see this again. This might go to zero, right?
Mm.
Like the concept of the stock market might go down. And I feel like you might think I'm crazy because I'm just like, I just started getting into investing like a couple years ago. So tell me if if you're like, don't think like that. But I'm like, okay, I need to like remember that this money is not FDIC insured, which we have learned about today.
Yeah, which means that they will not pay you back if you lose it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I like what you said, like investing is not a get rich quick kind of thing.
Right. And my account might go to zero. Like there's always, I guess, a chance, right? And when I talk to clients about this, we do talk like this is apocalypse level stuff. If you're investing in the broader stock market, if you open an investment account and you pick 5 individual companies to invest in, your account could very well go to zero. And it could go to zero pretty quickly if all 5 companies fail. But if you're looking at investment strategies that target a lot of company stocks, like the whole stock market at once, which is pretty easy to do, more than likely, you're never going to see your investment go to zero, because if you're invested in 1,000 companies and 5 fail, you still have a lot of companies left that you're invested in that
I
have
was like, how many
value.
companies is now? I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we do count on money being there still for you in the future, even when you're investing it. And historically, with a broad market investment strategy, which is just, again, investing in like thousands of companies using a fund called like an ETF, you can expect historically, we've seen that money has doubled every 7 to 10 years. So you're like, whatever money is in here now, every 7 to 10 years, we're expecting it to double on average throughout your lifetime. There's a really good chance between now and 7 years from now, it's not going to be exactly double, because the stock market is not a straight line up. It's very variable. Some years are up and some years are down. But we do have these averages that we can look at historically since the stock market started, and think about how our money might grow. And when you think about money doubling, you're not going to see that in a high yield savings account. So this is money that is long-term money that you're not going to need to touch anytime soon.
So if you want to start investing, are there resources that you would recommend for how to find out how to do it yourself? Or do you always really recommend working with a financial advisor?
Working with a financial advisor is not always the answer. However, there are financial advisors out there that provide short-term advice. So that means not really big relationships, not high-cost things, but like 1 to 2 meetings with an advisor to just get you on the right track, which I do. But there are so many folks out there that do that. So that's always an option if you want a little bit more customized guidance for yourself. If not, there are some great books out there on investing, and there are a few podcasts too. I would say whenever you are reading stuff online, really look at the sources and understand, like, am I reading this on a Reddit thread? And if I am I verifying this outside somewhere else? There are really big investment companies that offer great education resources out there. There's a company, or there's an organization called the CFP board. They have great education resources out there for folks. And those are, and oh, on my Instagram, I have a link tree to Leah's favorite books. So instead of like listing all the books now, you can go there and like, it's an Amazon link and you can see all the books I like to give people for investing.
Yes.
Okay,
What's your
what's your
Instagram
Instagram
handle?
Orchard Financial.
There
At
we go.
Orchard Financial.
Yes.
At
Yes.
Orchard. Can you spell Orchard?
Yes. ORCHARD.
Oh my goodness.
It's like a fruit orchard.
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
Amanda
Orchard
asking you to
Financial.
spell it gave me so much panic. I'm the worst. I flip my letters and my numbers so bad.
It's
I was
actually
like,
a hard word too.
yes. I was like putting Leah on the spot.
Just making sure we got it, because like, I'm going there like right now. As we wrap up kind of this conversation, I wanted to like thank you for diving into this like super high level thing. And I know as we were like planning out this episode, it's like, how do we take an hour to talk about the giant that is financial advice and financial wellness? And so like, I just want to thank you first of all for like coming on. As we wrap up, what is one piece of advice that you wish everyone was able to learn earlier on?
And there is so many like little rules of thumb and all of these things that I could say. But when I was kind of thinking about what would I tell someone, I think I would say your money story from when you were a child and the way that you relate to money now, it's not your fault the way that it is, right? And your money story is your story to rewrite. And right now is the best time to do that. So don't feel guilty about where you think your peers are compared to where you are. There's no such thing as being behind. Start doing changes now. Start simple and make small tweaks along the way. But like, be empowered that you can rewrite your money story and that money can bring you joy.
Yeah, I think one of my biggest takeaways that you said was like your budget and your money should empower your values. So instead, I think that's my big thing that I'm going to think about after this is like instead of I'm going to open up Monarch, I'm going to open up my budgeting app and I'm going to be like, okay, let's shift a couple of things around because obviously like I don't feel good when I spend money on this, but I do anyway because that's my dopamine hit. But
Mm-hmm.
maybe I need to allocate more into my grocery spend,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think that's my big takeaway is like where you spend your money shows your values.
I love that you're not bad with money. It's just a skill that you
Mhm.
haven't developed yet, and that's okay. And I love like taking the shame away from it, you know, and not beating yourself up that if you're like, oh, I'm bad with money, it's because it's a skill that you probably weren't taught, and that's okay. And today's a great day just to start building that skill and starting small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also starting now. I mean, even just
Mhm.
talking about investing, like knowing that your money, like on average, doubles every 7 to 10 years in the stock market, like how epic is that when you start now, right?
Yep.
As opposed to if you wait 7 years from now, you missed a whole doubling of your money.
Or like even starting now could be opening up that second checking account
Mm-hmm.
and starting to put $10 in there.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, like right now, if you're driving and listening to this and you're done driving, you could open up a high yield savings account and put in $10,
Yep.
you know?
Yeah.
I think the ways to start are, I love that they're small and they don't have to be, you're not trying to move a mountain. It's like one pebble at a time.
I just envision a world where Sapphic people are all rich as hell. And like not necessarily like rich, but we're all like financially thriving, right? And that's what I want for our community. Like
Mhm.
it's not fair that we're making 98 cents on a dollar and then like
90 cents to the
90,
dollar.
90 cents to the dollar
And
and
then
then
our
our trans friends are making like 68 cents, 60 cents to the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like that's not fair.
No.
And so we need to be like actively like empowering each other to change that narrative.
Yes.
Yeah.
We need to bring all of us up. And the way to do that is to start investing and invest early and grow our money so that we can in turn put it right back into the communities that we love and help the people who need it.
Yeah, because then I'm like, oh man, the spaces we could build, the groups we could uplift.
You know how many lesbian bars they would be?
Oh my goodness, do you know, like, I'm like, everybody gets top surgery.
Yeah.
I'm like, everybody gets gender affirming care for free.
Yes.
I am like, you get hormones, you get, like, hooray. You know, I'm like, family building, because I'm
Yeah.
like, queer people deserve the families that they want to build,
They
and they deserve secure housing and food, and, you know,
what you're doing, Leah, is just so important. And so we thank you for like what you're doing for our community and the stuff that you're building. I know it takes like your time and energy and your passion, and I'm glad that we get to all benefit from it.
Thank you so much.
Of
Thank you for
course.
having me.
Of course. And again, you're at Orchard Financial. Is there anywhere else that people can reach you?
No, that is really the best place.
Great.
And they can just send you an email?
They can send me an email, leah@orchardfinancial.com. You can send me an Instagram DM, but I'm better at email. Also, my website, orchardfinancial.com, has a direct link to my calendar, so you can schedule a free 30-minute chat, and I can kind of steer you in the right direction.
That's
Yeah, y'all. Free
That's
99.
huge. That's gigantic.
FREE. We're going to spell that one.
FREA.
Yes, and
Great.
Leah's really nice, y'all. So if you're feeling like overwhelmed or scared to even start this conversation, like it's going to be an easy conversation with Leah. So
Yeah.
don't like be brave. You can do it.
Thank you again for listening in. We hope that this episode gave you some tools to feel more empowered in your finances and kind of help our community in general get up off of our feet and start like thriving. We all deserve to be like financially well. And so if you love this episode, go ahead. You have now listened to an entire episode, so you can go ahead and rate our show. If you are on Spotify, you just hit the star. If you are on Apple Podcasts, there's also a star rating. If you're on YouTube, you can give us a thumbs up. You can also rate the show in general. And so we just really thank you. Rating the show is one of the most powerful ways that you can support our podcast and get people to know that this is a really good resource for the community. So thank you again for being here. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in.
Be sure to subscribe, follow us on social media,
And share episodes with your friends.
see you next time.
Bye.